What if Trump already knew? Not rumors, not speculation, but information that was sitting inside Epstein's files before his death. Because what Senator Murray asked Pam Bondi next wasn't just about a death, it was about what wasn't investigated, and why. And the woman sitting under oath in front of Senator Murray had been responsible for answering every single one of those questions. She didn't, and today, that silence was about to go on the record. Did anyone actually investigate this, or did everyone already know what happened? And in just 83 seconds, everything started to fall apart, and we need to talk about every single second of it, because this wasn't a procedural failure. This wasn't bureaucratic incompetence. The details of what happened, and what was never investigated, form a pattern so specific, so deliberate, that Senator Murray came to that hearing room not with suspicions, but with a timeline. A documented, cross-referenced, sourced timeline that the Justice Department had spent years praying no one would assemble. She assembled it. Murray entered the room quietly. No drama, no theatrical buildup, just a leather folder, a legal pad, and the particular stillness of a former prosecutor who has already won before the first question lands. Attorney General Bondi sat across from her looking composed, prepared, confident the way people are confident when they believe the walls around them are still standing. They weren't. Attorney General Bondi, Murray began, her voice carrying the low, deliberate weight of someone laying a foundation. I want to start with something simple. The 48 hours before his death. Specifically, the communications. Who did he speak to? Not in general terms. Names, calls, recipients. Were those records fully secured and reviewed by your office? Because according to internal logs, Murray continued, not waiting for an answer, there were multiple outgoing communications in his final days. Some connected to individuals in his financial network. Some that have never been publicly explained. Were those communications made available to your investigators? Because according to internal summaries reviewed by multiple outlets, at least one of those final calls has never been fully clarified. Not who initiated it, not what was discussed, just a gap in a timeline that was supposed to be airtight. And when timelines have gaps, investigators usually ask why, or were they quietly set aside? Senator, communications of that nature would fall under what? Murray said. He was in federal custody. Every call he made was logged. I'm asking whether those logs were reviewed, yes or no. Her jaw tightened. I received briefings consistent with the last people he spoke to, Murray said, overriding the non-answer with the quiet authority of someone who had heard enough of them. Were they interviewed? Were they identified publicly? Because the American people have never been told who Jeffrey Epstein spent his final hours in contact with. And I would like to know why. No answer came, but Murray wasn't finished, not even close. She turned a page. Let's talk about the money, she said. Because this is where it stops feeling like negligence and starts feeling like something else entirely. She looked directly at Bondi. In the days immediately preceding his death, significant financial transfers were initiated, not routine account maintenance, movements of a scale and nature that, under any normal regulatory framework, would trigger immediate review and documentation. Transfers connected to individuals whose names appear in sealed estate materials. She paused. Were those transactions flagged? Were they investigated? Did your office ask who initiated them and why they occurred at that specific moment? Bondi opened her mouth. Because $1.1 billion moved through accounts connected to the Epstein estate in the weeks following his death, Murray continued. $1.1 billion. No hearings, no urgency, just silence, and nobody in that room could explain why. No hearings, no urgency, just silence. She looked up. Why? The room didn't move. And here is where you need to pay attention. Because what Murray said next was not about money or procedure or oversight failures. It was about something much darker, the kind of question that once asked cannot be unasked. Attorney General Bondi, Murray said, her voice dropping just slightly. Let me ask you about the physical circumstances of that night. Because independent experts, pathologists retained by the family, not by the government, have raised serious questions about the nature of what happened in that cell. Questions that conflict with the official conclusion. Questions that in any other context would have triggered a mandatory second review. She paused. Did your office request an independent forensic review, one conducted outside the institutional chain that was already implicated in the oversight failures of that evening? A beat. No, Bondi said quietly. No, Murray repeated, not with contempt, with something quieter and more damaging, the tone of someone recording a fact for the historical record. The cameras in the unit were non-operational, and it wasn't just that the cameras weren't working. Investigators later confirmed that footage from nearby units, areas that should have captured movement in and out, was also unavailable, not corrupted, not incomplete, just missing. And when multiple systems fail at the same time, investigators usually don't call that coincidence. The guards on duty failed to conduct mandatory checks and documented those checks as completed when they were not. The cellmate who should have been present had been transferred out shortly before, because just weeks before, there had already been a serious incident inside that same facility, an incident that should have triggered heightened supervision, stricter monitoring, constant oversight. Instead, protocols were relaxed, and the one person who should have been under the highest level of watch was left in the lowest level of protection. And the forensic questions raised by independent experts were never answered by a second, independent review. She let that sequence sit in the air. Does that pattern concern you, Attorney General? Or maybe I should ask this differently. Do you actually believe he died the way we were told? Or was the conclusion written before the investigation even began? Any of it. Bondi's voice came out thinner than before. Appropriate reviews were conducted by the relevant. Who authorized that transfer? On whose instruction was Epstein left alone in that cell on that night? More silence. The kind that fills a room from wall to wall. Because someone made that decision, Murray said. It didn't happen by accident. Someone, with the authority to move a federal detainee, chose to move him. Someone, with access to facility systems, was present when those cameras went dark. Someone, somewhere in that chain of custody, made a series of decisions that, taken individually, might be explained away, and whoever it was, had enough power to reach inside a federal facility, enough reach to make protocols disappear. Because access to that unit wasn't random. Every entry required clearance, logged, verified, which means if someone was there who shouldn't have been, that record either exists, or it was never meant to, and either possibility raises the same question. But taken together, she paused, formed something that a serious investigator would not walk away from. She turned to another page, and the room, somehow, got quieter. I want to talk about Mark Epstein, she said. A few reporters looked up. Jeffrey Epstein's brother. His statements were received by your office. Did you personally review them? Not a summary, his actual words. Bondi hesitated. I reviewed materials. Mark Epstein said he does not believe his brother's death occurred the way the official record states, Murray said. He said, directly, that if this had been a random act, there would be no reason for a cover-up, his words. And then he said something else. She looked down at the page. He said that in 2016, his brother told him that if he revealed what he knew about certain candidates, the results of that election would need to be invalidated, that the information he possessed was that consequential. She set the paper flat. And one of those candidates was Donald Trump. So the question isn't just what Epstein knew, it's who else knew it too. Mark Epstein confirmed that the two were, his word, very close. He said that publicly, on the record. Murray looked at Bondi. Did your department, at any point, formally assess whether the files in Epstein's possession, or the individuals named within them, intersected with active political interests at the time of his death? Was that question ever asked by someone with the authority and the willingness to pursue it regardless of where it led? 12 seconds passed. Then 20, then 35. A Senate aide along the back wall crossed her arms slowly. The press gallery had gone completely still. No typing, no shuffling, no ambient noise of any kind. 50 seconds, I believe, Bondi said finally, her voice walking a tightrope between composure and collapse, that all appropriate steps were taken within the legal and procedural framework available at the time. Murray nodded once, the nod of someone who expected exactly that answer and had prepared for it. Within the framework available, she repeated. Let me ask this differently then. The people inside that facility that night, every guard, every officer on duty, gave statements. Every one of them was questioned. She looked directly at Bondi. How many of them faced real consequences for what happened on their watch? For the documented failures, the missed checks, the false logs, the non-functional equipment? How many faced accountability proportionate to the gravity of what they allowed to occur? No answer. Because from everything I have reviewed, Murray said, the system documented the failure. It noted every missed check. It recorded the camera outage, it acknowledged the procedural violations, and then, she paused, it treated those failures as administrative matters, not as the potential facilitation of something irreversible. She closed the folder. Do you understand why the American people find that difficult to accept? Bondi's face had become something impossible to read. And then Murray asked the question that the entire hearing had been building toward, quietly, without theatrics. The way you ask something when you already suspect the answer and want to give the other person one final opportunity to tell the truth. Attorney General Bondi, she said, do you believe Jeffrey Epstein's death was fully and independently investigated? Do you believe every question was asked, every lead pursued, every person with relevant knowledge identified and held accountable? She paused. Or do you believe there are things about that night that were never meant to be understood? 83 seconds of silence. 3 cameras captured all of it. When Bondi finally spoke, her answer was careful, procedurally constructed, airtight in the way that answers are when someone has spent years building walls around a question. But nobody in that room was listening to the answer. They were all still inside the silence. Because the cameras failed, the guards slept, the cellmate vanished, the financial transfers moved, the communications went unexamined, the forensic questions went unanswered. The brother said cover-up. The 2016 conversation pointed at something bigger than one man's crimes, and the woman responsible for finding answers spent 83 seconds unable to produce a single one. At some point, this stops looking like failure and starts looking like something else. But there is one thing that no procedural explanation can account for. When you have every resource, every authority, and every obligation to find the truth, and you don't find it, the question is no longer whether the system failed. The question is whether the system was supposed to. So let's be honest. What do you actually believe happened in that cell?